If you're an entrepreneur with an international footprint, I have some advice for you to consider, and it's not going to be very popular. You see, while you may have looked at the idea of moving your corporate structure offshore to legally reduce your business taxes, you may have moved yourself overseas to reduce your personal taxes. You may have offshored all sorts of different things in your business. One of the most important things to offshore, in my opinion, that many businesses don't, is your staff. And in this video, I'm going to share with you several new laws and new examples of why you should potentially avoid hiring Western workers. Hi guys, I'm Andrew Henderson, and this video is probably not going to make me very popular with a lot of folks. In fact, I think you're going to see some people expressing their discontent with this message. Here at Nomad Capitalist, we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs go where they're treated best. And we often talk about ways to legally reduce your taxes and create safe havens around the world. You can learn more about these at nomadcapitalist.com. But one of the things that I've seen in my experience is that the Western world is making it much harder to hire people for your company. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the big examples we've talked about before is if you're going to move your entire business overseas, but you're going to leave a big office full of staff back in, let's say, the United States or Canada or Australia, that's going to make your offshore plans more complicated. Now, we've helped people do that. Us and our network of international tax lawyers and accountants and experts will work together and we figure out the best way for folks who want to keep staffs around the world, including in Western countries. How do you do that and still get your offshore tax benefits? It just makes things more complicated. So where if you have only a few employees, a few team members, and you want to move those people offshore, it'll often make your offshore process a lot easier. So tax is one reason. But what you also see in Western countries these days, and I have a few examples, is governments that are making more and more laws to make it harder and harder for businesses to hire and to be treated fairly. I remember when I was a kid, we had a family friend who his family owned and he managed like a 1,000 unit apartment building, like a big apartment complex where we grew up in Ohio. And I went over, I was 15 or 16 years old, something like that. My father took me over one summer day and said, we're going to meet this guy, and he's going to show you around the complex. I knew the guy, but I'd never seen this apartment complex that they owned. And he showed me all around, and he showed me through a vacant apartment. I remember, for some reason, that moment when he showed me different things around the apartment that the previous tenants broke. He said, Andrew, if I wanted to take those tenants to court, forget it. They're out, they have no money, they're judgment-proof. Right? He's a lawyer also. That's a great word, judgment-proof, right? He said, but if a guy moves in here, he can do whatever he wants because if they take me to housing court, he says, I have to go to housing court every once in a while, you lose every time. You just show up because you have to make an appearance. You know you're going to lose, and that's how it works. To me, that's how employment in the West is going. There are new examples now that speak to both the difficulties of hiring and also the tax consequences. In the United Kingdom, for example, they recently came out with a new tax provision that basically made it very difficult for contractors. Many of them were going back to a pay-as-you-earn system that affected offshore businesses and made it harder to hire folks in the UK. In the United States, in California, very strict new contractor rules came in that made it very difficult to classify someone as a contractor, put big penalties in place, added a lot more bureaucracy and red tape and burden. And even the contractors didn't like it because they were losing a lot of business because people now were shifting to hire contractors in other states. I think you'll see other states and other countries in the Western world follow that model. And what that means if you're an offshore business owner is you're going to have more strict tax compliance in those countries because someone who's a contractor working for you 10 hours a week is a bit easier to manage generally from an international tax perspective than someone who's an employee on the payroll. In the United States, they call it W-2, right? And so my advice is when countries are doing the thing where you show up and you always lose, that's when it's time to go where you're treated best. What I've seen, traveling all over the world is when I lived in the United States, I had it wrong. I'll admit it. I would go around saying lazy Americans. On a global scale, people in the United States are actually not that lazy. There are actually a lot of really hardworking people in the United States. But on the government level, There are governments where they want to welcome you. You know, in Serbia, they've got a program for larger employers. You come and hire 100 or 200 people. They're going to basically not only give you stuff, but they're going to slash most of the employment taxes that you pay to the bone, in addition to potentially some free perks. A lot of other countries have made it very easy, and they've incentivized people to come and work. Countries like Turkey even give you citizenship. Portugal, they give you residence. Bulgaria, they give you permanent residence for hiring people in their country. They want you to come. Now, not all those countries that incentivize it are the best place for you to go. They may not have the best quality workers. The employment taxes may be too high. You've got to, weigh out whether a second citizenship or a residence permit or living in Europe or payroll tax or simplicity, whatever it is that's important to you. But these Western countries are basically saying, you know what? You have to hire people, so we're going to make your life difficult. But you can go anywhere and hire. We've talked about hiring in Armenia, in Serbia, in Ukraine, in the Philippines. I've even found really great people in places like Egypt and Venezuela. Some of the best people actually have been there. And what I found is in these countries, you have a great mindset. Not everybody, but once you find the right people, you have a hardworking mindset, people who know it's not easy. One of my frustrations with the Western world these days, especially just coming off of a 10-year boom market, is people think that you should beg them to work for you. And so there are places in the world where you can hire people who they want to be hired. Maybe unemployment there is higher. Wages are certainly lower in most of these countries, sometimes dramatically, 70, 80, 90% lower. You can have generally lower taxes. There are fewer regulations, less red tape, less paperwork to file. Now, I'm not saying you should go to Bangladesh and pay people $11 a month and lock them up like it's the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, waiting for the fire to come. But we want to take care of our people. We want to take care of people. But when you hire out overseas and you have people who are able to better do the job, in many cases, in my opinion, with less nonsense and less government intervention, you're able to pay above market rates to where they can make more money working for you than anywhere else in town. Meanwhile, where you're from, you're being buried in paperwork. They're making it harder and harder for you to do things simply. These governments in the West think that it's your job to work for them. They don't serve you. You serve them. You fill out piles and piles of forms. I had a friend who he ran a family business. He was the business manager. Every month it was stacks of forms for this, that, and the other. When you hire in the places that we're talking about, you don't have that. You don't have nearly the risk of litigation. You don't have nearly the risk of many other things, and you save money in the process. The Western world has said it's difficult to hire. I've talked to entrepreneurs all around the world. They say, I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth. These new laws, where the governments are cracking down, they're disincentivizing hiring contractors. They want to lock you into hiring people as employees, providing all sorts of benefits, paying all the government taxes. Even if you don't need an employee, that's going to drive people away. And so rather than try and fight that system, I say go where you're treated best. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.